I know the title of the video seems a little bit mean, but this is a very unfortunate servant that we're about to get in a couple days over here on the NA version of the game. That is the Trung sisters, and I say they're unfortunate not because nobody really knows their lore, because, well, the event story should really polish up on that and maybe get you to like them a little bit more. But I say they're unfortunate because they're in such stiff competition that when they dropped another single target art saber, it was kind of like, if you've ever seen the bit of like all the Buzz Lightyears on the toy shelf, it's like, oh, whoop-de-doo, the 70th one that we're getting for this. And it also doesn't help that you have two very solid free-to-play options. Saber Hokusai, who's kind of already come out with the Summer 4 event, and then Theseus, who will be a free servant that everybody can get in just the general pool in a couple of years down the line. So she's very, very unfortunate. We're still going to talk about her in today's video if you do decide to pull for her, because I don't think they're bad. They're actually a good servant. It's just they got really steep competition, and we just also got the Dio Scurry twins, who I prefer a little bit more with their first skill gimmick and being able to pierce through everything. And you also know they're a very unfortunate servant because usually I show gameplay in the background of the featured servant, but I was not able to find a single Dio Scurry twin after going on the friends list for a couple hours. I popped on an anime that I was going to watch and I just kept scrolling until I could try to find one, could not find them. And so instead I've decided to showcase some of the other single target art servants as we kind of go over their details and whatnot. But before we begin, if you could leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel for that sweet daily FGO content. Sometimes I've been known to double upload when things get a little bit more rowdy, so if you just need your FGO fix and maybe an Arknights, a Star Rail fix every now and then, because I'm dipping my toes in some of those games, make sure you subscribe. And also, leave your thoughts in the comments down below on what you think of the whole Trung sisters and their viability and all that good stuff. But maybe wait till after we go over all their details, because they are a pretty forgetful servant, unfortunately, and you might have forgotten what they're able to do. So starting off with their hits, they are rocking a double buster double arts deck, which I really like. As you guys know, I am a huge art simp. You know, if you're rocking double arts cards, especially you got an arts NP, you're already a #1 in my book. But having those double buster cards does mean that, well, if you're going to do something more like a stall strategy where you're going to incorporate someone like Merlin in those immortal team comps, they can make use of the hero creation on the third skill. It's a little bit of a more niche thing that's probably not going to crop up as much when Lady Avalon comes out. But as I broke down about a week or two ago, Lady Avalon does not directly replace Merlin. They both kind of do different things and are tailored slightly differently for more content based on how their NPs work, so you could still get away with using Merlin, especially if you don't pull the limited pretender Lady Avalon, right? Like, go figure, you still have to pull the unit as well. But aside from their deck, they have 0.43% NP gain with two pretty solid arts cards rocking 4 hits apiece, and their own NP has a whopping 9 hits, so if you want to bring Caskill or give them some crazy star gen buffing CE or something along those lines, they could actually drop a decent bit of stars on that if you really want to use them for that. But more than likely, you're going to be using them to either chunk larger enemies and 90+ nodes, as they do have a pretty decent battery, or you're going to use them in boss fights as they are single target. So getting all those extra hits means more NP refund whenever they fire their NP. They are also rocking the 5-hit extra attack, which you guys know I love, but maybe you don't know why. Well, the extra attack is a composite card that gen stars, NP, and does big boy damage. And 5 is the nice sweet spot that we like to see on our servants. Anything lower is fraudulent, anything higher, and whew, they might be the best servant in the game. But with that being said, the skills always pay the bills for the servant. You can have a cracked NP, you can have cracked hits, but if you do not have good skills, you're probably a fraud. So moving into their skills, starting off with skill 1, they're increasing the entire party's attack by 15% and also increasing the party's arts performance by 15%, 3 turns a pop on both of those for 5 turns. So I know that it doesn't look like more modern servants, especially if you look at JP where everyone has 30 billion different effects on all of their skills, but it's still in its simplicity very good. For one, they are applying 2 different buff types to themselves, and different buff types in FGO can be multiplicative and give you more damage. So the fact that they're starting to give themselves and the entire party multiplicative buffs is already very strong in and of itself, but it also does something that, say you're going to be bringing them with Lady Avalon and Castoria, Merlin Castoria, double Castoria even, giving those supports the arts card performance buff is very strong, especially in arts teams, because it's just making that arts card's NP NP gain just a little bit better. Not super insane because it's only 15%, but it's a nice little buff with all the NP that your supports are throwing around, NP gain specifically from Castoria, that it in a way does contribute to the party and the entire team by giving everybody technically an NP gain buff, which again, in arts teams, you're pretty much always going to be doing arts chains anyway, so it does work out. Moving over to her second skill though, this is where things kind of start to parallel the Dio Scurry twins a little bit, and why I like the Dio Scurry twins, their on attack buff skill a little bit more. I like theirs more because it turns their arts cards into pseudo quick cards and their quick cards into pseudo arts cards. For the Trung sisters, they almost have this ramping damage type effect, but it's so close to the mark that it misses out just a little bit. For one, they're giving themselves a set base 15% arts and buster buff, which again is pretty nice with their first skill. This would now add up to being a 30% arts buff, and they do have a further arts and buster buff on their own NP. So with just the first, second skill and the overcharge on NP at base overcharge 1, they're rocking a 40% arts card buff. And again, the NP does at least stack, so you know you can maintain that. But what you're seeing right now is something that was so close to the mark that could have been so insane that they barely missed out on. So whenever they attack with their buster cards, they buff their arts cards by 10% for 1 turn. And whenever they attack with their arts cards, they buff their buster cards by 10% for 1 turn. If these stacking buffs were 3 turns and you could actually start getting meaningful stacks, I think people would respect the Trung sisters a lot more, you know, because you look at things like damage charts and they look really low, but once you start to stack their damage up a little bit, they can actually really get to a decent level of damage. But imagine if they were able to keep these buffs for 3 turns, they would be absolutely insane, because when you look at their damage with only 2 additional stacks, they're right underneath Nero Bride, right? And that would make them very nice. It's just a generic damage dealing servant that doesn't have any different power mods and stuff, because then you could say, well, Benny Enma would still beat them out fighting Chaotic Evil, or Nero Bride would beat them fighting Sky Attribute guys, or Dio Scurry maybe has a little bit more tech because of their Pierce Invul and Ignore defense on NP, but then they would just have like some of the highest, if not the highest, free damage out of all the single target sabers, which would almost make them more like a 5-star version of, say, Saber Hokusai, just a generically good servant that just has very basic skills but are very effective in what they are setting out to do. Unfortunately, they're not able to do that. I do hope that they do make the buffs you actually get, because mind you, somebody's probably already commented and said, well, ZTL, the on attack buff is 3 turns, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the actual buff you receive from the on attack buff only being for 1 turn. If that was for 3 turns, they get that in a buff, and you know, whatever they want to go ahead and buff this servant. I'm pretty sure even Lasengos forgot about them. I haven't seen them on really anything CE wise or art wise anywhere, so maybe they've even forgot about them. But if somebody's, you know, passing down the halls of Lasengel and they're like, oh yeah, we got that servant over there, we should probably go ahead and do something with them, then I think they realistically could get a buff like that. I think something like that would be really strong for them, and you wouldn't need to give them like NP damage or anything insane like that, because you would build up to that extra damage, and I think it'd be very good for them. Finally, there's their third skill, which again is just a very strong skill in and of itself. It gives them a self 30% battery, which again is always going to be good. It's going to allow you to work very well with different CEs. Say you want to bring them to some 90 plus farming comp, you know, most of those events are going to give you a 50% starting charge CE, then you have this 30%, you do their append skill, you don't have to touch them with another servant or, you know, support or anything like that. They're already at 100%. So that's just very good, very generic. We love to see it. They're also increasing the party's NP gain by 20% for 3 turns, and their critical attack chance resistance by 20% for 3 turns on a 6-turn cooldown, which again, I really do like. I like that they are giving the arts buff that normally that's kind of wasted on certain servants. Like say pre-buff Gilgamesh or something, him giving a 21% attack buff to Castoria and Merlin doesn't really matter. You know, then what are they going to do with that attack buff? Do slightly more damage? They're not DPSs, they're not designed to really do a whole lot of damage, but giving an arts buff can be very effective in raising the NP gain of the arts cards, and then they're further doing that not only for themselves but for the entire party, which again can make your team flow very well. It can make it just feel like a well-oiled machine, which is why I can't say that they're bad. I'm never going to say, oh, the Trung sisters, they suck. They're not good at all. It's just a slight flaw, I think, in the fact that they won't really push super hard. Yeah, nobody really knows who these servants are. And I think they fumbled a little bit on the second skill over there because their NP is also rather solid. I love the concept of the NP, being able to give the entire party a 1k heal for 3 turns. If that was maybe a 2 or 3k heal, that would fix the one problem with double Castoria comps, and that's that you really have no sustainability because you only have survivability. You don't have a way to recover your HP outside of maybe a CE or a command code to give you that healing. So the fact that she would be that source, not only healing, but also for damage, is super cool. I love that a lot. And then they're stacking Arts and Buster on their NP, but it's not just for themselves, it's 10 to 30% for the entire party for 3 turns. And I mean, that is really nice if you need to bring double DPSs, or again, say you're in a 90+ type farming style node and you need your AoE to get a little bit of extra damage and they happen to be a Buster or Art Servant, say it's like Summer Masashi or you're using Morgan because you're just like me for real. If they get to use their NP before you actually need to do the AoE parts of the node, then they're going to further buff the damage of those other DPS servants, right? And God forbid, you know, you give them something like Demonic Bodhisattva and they can give them, you know, 20% of a buff. That's actually starting to be a nice significant little buff on top of their attack buff that they're at least giving to everybody on their first kill. Because, you know, if you give it to Morgan for a farming comp, you can't really use the arts buff, but the Buster buff and the attack buff is going to be very good. So overall, they're not a bad servant. I mean, I even remember saying this when they initially came out on JP, that they don't really have a whole lot of problems. I didn't really harp as much on their second skill as much, but now after it being about 2 years, it is something that I'm like, I kind of wish that that was like a 3-turn thing that you could really allow them to ramp up and do just good generic damage. Which is something I think is even more true as of now, because every single servant kind of has the checklist of, okay, battery, power mod, plus like strong just attack buffs and NP damage buffs, you know, stuff along those lines. So they would kind of still be a bit unique in the fact that they're a ramping servant, but they'd be able to overtake some of the other single targets, which I think would be kind of nice. Unfortunately, they're a single target art saber and they have very stiff competition. Again, Nero Bride is not only a pseudo support, but a decent DPS in and of herself that has the Sky Attribute Power mod, which is something that's a bit more rare. And when you do have it, you know, you realize, oh man, what was I doing without the Sky Attribute Power mod? Then Dioscuri Twins just bypass most boss defensive gimmicks, which is super nice, and they just flow really well because of their first skill. And they also have party support on their second skill as well. Benny Enma has 2 very good generic power mods in Chaotic and or Evil, while also sporting really good debuffs for the enemy party and really solid support buffs for your party. Saito, unfortunately, is just really funny. I think Saito kind of fits the same role as the Trunk Sisters over here. It's just kind of a generically good type servant, but he's funny because he kind of looks like Virgil, so he kind of just gets meme points that they don't have. Hokusai Saber, unfortunately, is a free-to-play, so you can get her to free NP5, so she will do more than enough damage to justify using her over the Trunk Sisters, unless you like the party support. Lancelot Saber's been getting better and better, and he's super simple, dummy, easy to use, so you just click 3 buttons and newer players might gravitate towards him a little bit more than that. Theseus has 2 really good power mods. Or I guess Demonic Beast Servant is not as crazy, because that's like really just people like Asterios, but Giant's also kind of nice, because again, it's just like when you don't have it, you know, and you finally do get it on a free-to-play servant nonetheless, it kind of shows a little bit of its value. I guess she's kind of beating out Maeve Saber, I suppose, but who is really trying to be punching down that hard on Maeve Saber? Come on, man. She's a single target that's doing AoE damage. I think the lady has had enough qualms going on in her own kit and everything. So she is good. I do like them. It's just kind of a forgettable servant from the story, and they have like a little bit of an issue on their second skill that I think really could have made them stand up, but they fumbled the ball a little bit, and that's unfortunate. But if you're going to be summoning for them, you will get use out of them. The few times I have been able to use them, I have liked them in the Arts team comps, and they also benefit from the fact that if you're bringing them as a friend, thankfully there's a whole smorgasbord of options to bring in your different art setups that you don't need to do double Castoria, so you barely feel not having it, as opposed to like, if I'm trying to test a Buster unit I don't have, and I don't have the second Koyanskaya there, it hurts a little bit more. So I guess, hey, you could chalk that up as another benefit for them. But let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace.